Welcome back to This Was Supposed to Be Easy, your go-to podcast for connection, joy, and a good dose of laughter.
Hosted by two friends who've seen enough of life to know that it's never as simple as it sounds
or looks.
Each conversation celebrates the diverse journeys we travel, the moments of bravery, the strength we didn't know we had, and the joy we find along the way.
Because let's be honest, life is full of things that were supposed to be easy, but turned out to be harder.
And definitely funnier
than we thought. This is Amy.
And this is Cheryl. And if it were easy, we wouldn't be here. Amy, I have a bit of a conundrum.
Tell me.
So I just keep thinking about how numb my butt is. It's probably not a good way to start.
But it's a way to be catchy. So tell us more about that.
So I returned home last night from my weekly commute, and because of weather, because of yet another show that we went to, I spent 11 hours in the car in the time span of 2 days, which when I think about that, that's quite a bit more than an 8-hour workday, which I also completed on both of those days. And again, I do this all the time. I do it for work. I did it obviously for pleasure and got to spend time with my friends going to a show. But the conundrum is that there are a couple of fairly important, pretty important events happening tomorrow that a big part of me really wants to go to. But if I do, I'm looking at another 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 8 hours in the car all in one day. I think what I'm struggling with is the idea of needing to say no for myself, but also struggling with saying no because there are things that I also sort of want to do. And it just makes me think so much about, why is it that saying no to something feels so hard?
Right. Well, and I think even expanding on that, saying no to yourself is really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm saying no for myself. I think I'm going to say no. I haven't totally decided, but I'm leaning in that direction. I think I'm going to say no for myself, but also saying no is depriving myself, I guess.
Right.
And just, things that I do believe in. I do believe in the importance of them. And so I don't know, it just made me think, let's talk about why feeling no feels so emotionally expensive.
I like the way that you worded that emotionally expensive, because it is. And yet we know to do it for our own mental health. We're told to, I think you could go on to many podcasts and read many books that, by saying no, I know I've used even the saying in previous podcasts that we've recorded where like when you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. So by saying no to not driving 8 hours tomorrow, you're saying yes to maybe having a day of rest that you need or something like that. But I do think every decision comes at some type of expenditure. And what does that mean when you're putting money in both pots, like the pot of being disappointed and the pot of being happy? So then like making the decision of which pot are you making the bigger investment to by saying no, which pot are you making the bigger investment into saying yes?
Yeah. And I don't know, there's so much guilt. I'm feeling guilt. And it's not that any particular person is putting pressure on me, right? And I don't know,
Right.
maybe it's because we're women and there is that guilt associated with saying no. But when I'm gearing up to like make this decision and say no, I'm already feeling the guilt. I'm already second guessing myself or feeling like I have to find all the right people and over explain myself.
Right.
It's just so hard to just say no and not feel like have this internal monologue of what, are they going to be disappointed? Should I explain more? Do they think that I was being selfish? Like all those questions that we have inside when we say no. And I could say yes, there'd be a lot of discomfort associated with it. But sometimes we do that, right? Instead of saying no, we say yes just to avoid that discomfort. And I'm going to convince myself that there just wasn't enough time and space at home between the trips to make this something I can do.
So I think it sounds like it's pretty safe to lean into that you are going to say no. But there's also that then the guilt, the like mental wishy-washiness that you have and all the costs that you pay in, I guess,
Yeah,
deplete,
yeah.
you as well. Like what happens then when you are continuing to think something over? I know I usually say I'm going to mill that over a little bit or I'm going to, muddle through or there's all those things, but yeah, what happens then when you still give it space in your head, and prime real estate, because I bet it's during like times that you'd really like to tune out that you think about it and like, well, I could, instead of like making the decision as a definitive decision. Like,
Mhm.
I've made this decision, there's no turning back. Once you seal the envelope, slap the gavel, whatever it is, like the decision is made, then there's no turning around. It's made and like there's no longer the back and forth, the teeter-totter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, come on. Is anyone out there listening and thinking, "That's me. It's so hard to say no." And you're right though, as we have this whole debate, I think, in some ways we were just socialized to be reliable, be helpful, to be accommodating, and we don't want to be that person that people look at as being difficult. And you're a strong woman, you can handle it, and all of those thoughts. But just last week I think we talked about that mental load, that unfinished business. And through the entire process of, do I say no, don't I say no, like that mental load is happening because it's not finished business.
Right.
And yeah, I just thought, "Hey, let's talk about that today. Let's talk about why no isn't as simple or as neutral for women as I can guesstimate that I think it is, for men."
Yeah, and having never lived my life as a man, I don't know what that looks like, but it definitely does appear that way, that there is a level of, but I do think when we say no, there's a lot of power in those two words. And I think there's some differentiation too. And like we've kind of touched on, like the idea of saying no to somebody else weighs differently than saying no to ourselves. Because I think we're willing to let ourselves down in a way that we might not be able to let someone else down or feel like we're letting someone else down, right? Like I think it's the meaning behind the no or the feelings behind the no. I saw this list and it said that no can be words for I'm failing. No, I'm ungrateful. No, I'm letting someone down, or no, the fear of not being asked again. So those are kind of the four ways of saying no. And I'm actually, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of a friend that I was talking to sometime last year, and they were telling me how much they were struggling at their job.
Mhm,
And I remember asking, like, have you said that you can't take on another project? And they said no, because they were afraid that they would look like they were failing in front of their leadership
mhm,
and that like they didn't have it together and they were worried that it would appear that they didn't. And so then that also made me think of when we use it as that, like I'm failing, like the thought of I'm failing or somebody else is going to see that I'm failing. That's usually when I step in and think, am I failing if I say yes and don't do it well versus the idea of saying no and then doing the maybe 800 other things I am doing better because I'm not continuing to stretch my brain.
Right. Right. And I think what you also maybe just brought up is, are there sort of categories of people or spaces that are harder or easier to say no to, right? Like
Well,
work
so
versus
yes,
family versus, friends.
right. So I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about your conundrum. So of your conundrum, if we were to really think about the no, I'm failing, no, I'm ungrateful, no, I'm letting someone down, no, I won't be asked again, which one do you feel speaks most to you?
I suspect, so if I decide to get in the car tomorrow, there's two things I need to do. So I'm saying no to two very different things. And I think the first one, I'm sorry I'm being vague, but I feel also the need to be vague. Um,
Yeah, that's fine.
I think the first one is on more of a professional level and how I'm viewed. So, what category do you think? I can't remember exactly what you said, but what category do you think that falls into? I'm failing. Like I
I
should have been
think
a
I'm
better
failing.
whatever in this position.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that feels more like I'm failing. If you're looking at it in a professional way, I often think then it's I'm failing.
Yeah. The second item thing I'm saying no to really is, I'm not sure if it falls into those categories because it really is, I would love to go to this event. I would love to. If I lived any closer, I would be there 100%. I want to be there with my friends, enjoying myself. So I'm sort of saying no to myself. I'm saying no to an invitation only solely because I can't make myself get back in the car.
Well,
So,
so to me, that one actually kind of, I think, falls in the I'm letting someone down, like I'm letting myself down. I'm letting
myself and my
myself.
friends, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think knowing this situation a little bit more, I don't think there's a single friend that would feel like you were letting them down. That's where I think, like, so maybe then no is actually like that FOMO of like the fear of missing out.
Yes.
Like, what by me saying no, I'm missing out on an opportunity to have a great time, or I'm missing out on an opportunity to spend time with friends or fill my bucket in that way.
Yeah. So as you talk about the different kinds of no, thinking about differences between who and what we're saying no to, and what that means, and which kind of no's, I don't know, feel selfish even. I guess that's the one that resonates with me right now. Like, which kind of no feel selfish even when mentally I can explain it away, right? Like I can say, no, it's not being selfish. It's I just need to draw this line. But it also feels like it sort of threatens, my identity of who I want to be for others.
Yeah,
So
I mean, and I think that that's a yeah, that's a big feeling. I like what you said too about the idea of how you who you want to be for others, because I think that is not so much about how it might appear or how it might look. It's more about who you want to be as a person. It almost sounds like it's more about your values, right? Like, and that's why maybe it feels a little bit bigger than saying no to being asked to be part of a task force, or there might be other things in your life that you say no to, you think about it once or twice. Maybe you have a even though I know you love to say it, you don't shit on yourself, I should do it, but I don't want to. But this one is really kind of causing that dilemma because there's also a bit of your values that are wrapped up in this.
yeah. Yeah. So, I'm thinking back to your, the categories you sort of offered in terms of no equals, I'm failing, or I'm ungrateful, or I'm letting someone down. And I like the idea of reframing that no to just mean I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention to my own needs. And should circumstances be different, if there were even just a couple more days between the last time I was doing a big drive, maybe it would be a much easier yes. But this no means I'm paying attention to what I really need, and I hope people can understand that I'm not rejecting the importance of the events, right? But that I just maybe was, maybe Amy, I was being wise.
You were being wise. Well, you know what? Here, let's shift it this way. We were talking about kind of the emotional cost. And
Hmm.
I want to expand on that a little bit. I think that, I use the term time, effort, energy as resources a lot.
Yes.
I know I say like that is time, effort, energy. So when we talk about like what it's costing us emotionally, I think it's also important to pull in your time, effort, and energy and financial into it as well. So looking at kind of all of those things. And so anybody who might be listening, who might be conundruming over their own situation of saying yes or no to something. So kind of going through it, like financially, is this a decision that is wise? And I don't necessarily mean wise in that, there are times that we all look back on a situation and say, like, I spent a lot of money to do something, but you know what? When it's all said and done, I don't regret that one single bit. It was the most amazing experience ever. I'm so happy that I did. Or you also might look back at a situation and be like, that is going to cost me a lot of money that I could think of a lot of better things to do with. And I don't think in 6 months, I might never think about it again, but it might not be. I might also say, like, that was a lot of money to spend on that one thing. And I don't feel like the payout was as strong. I think the effort, so thinking about then going to your effort, like what type of effort does it cost to get to, we only have so much effort that we can kind of give in any one thing. What type of effort is this going to deplete from you to be able to do the thing? And then I think as well, when we talk about time, and you and I have had numerous conversations about time lately, like me and the place where I am professionally, the place where I am emotionally, the place where I am, and I know I'm using I, but this is kind of what I'm thinking about with it. I used to always be a person where if it was a financial piece or a time piece, I would always pick the time piece because I felt like I had more time, right? So like
Yes.
if my
Yeah.
kid's school classroom, if the teacher said like, could you donate 5 hours of your time this semester to cut out flowers and, type up something or whatever? Or could you donate $30 to the classroom fund? I always felt like, oh, I can give 5 hours. I can give you 10 hours, but like even handing over 20, $30 felt like a stretch. But now where I'm at in my life, my earning, my whatever, just where I'm at, I don't have as many hours. Like my to-do list eats up all of my hours, and so I often think too. So when you're talking about time, effort, energy, like the time commitment, we talked about, for your situations, 8 additional hours, and that's,
That's
that
just the car part.
right.
That's
And
not
that's
the
just the car
events.
part, not the time of being there. So you are without a doubt, if you drive there and drive home and do the things you want to do, it is an entire day. Like no doubt about it. And maybe even spilling over into another one, depending how
Definitely.
tired you get.
Yeah.
And so I think when you think about those types of things, knowing your resources, knowing what you have, and the expense that it will be on your resources, not just your pocketbook, but all of those things, I think then it is okay to say, like, I don't have enough resources built up. Like, I don't have enough in the pot, so to speak, to be able to say yes and do it. Because here's the thing, and I know I've said this before, because this is so important. I cannot say yes to this joyfully,
Mm.
meaning that the imagery of being joyful in doing the task then is going to cost you more. It's not going to be able to exist. And I'm only speaking for myself. So I imagine myself in this situation because I don't want to talk for you, but like being in the car, begrudgingly saying my butt hurts as you're driving down and all of the other things that go along with it and what you might be giving up in turn to be in the car, to get to the event, to do the event, then to drive to get to the next event, to do that event. Like, will you be the best version of yourself at any of those events? And if that answer is not an immediate yes, then I think too that's another kind of, if you're 6 7ing it, if if you could see
Ooh,
me right
6,
now,
7.
you're doing your hand balance, that kind of pulls to the like, no, I shouldn't be doing it because it's again, it's depleting my resources even further. That doesn't allow me to show up as my best self. And I wouldn't want to show up as anything less than the best version of myself for these people.
Mhm. I'm going to I'm going to twist on that a little bit
Please do.
just to say, I believe that if I made the yes decision, I believe that I could get in my car and be joyful about it and listen to my audiobook while I was driving and do all the things. But what I think would carve into me is the notion that I'm not honoring the commitment I promised myself to practice wintering and to practice resting and to not be go, 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 go if I had a choice, right? And
Yeah.
and because I already had several days of that this week without enough space before the next, I think that's where I would feel the pain of the yes, is what rushed items will occur in my life following if I spend a whole nother, and not just a day, right? Like I'm talking probably like a 5 a.m. to an after midnight, kind of day, realizing, gosh, I made this other commitment to myself. And I do want to do, when I notice that there's options in my life, I need to be thinking more powerfully about that commitment I made to maybe do a little bit less. So I am just going to say that in an effort to maybe practice a cleaner no, although I don't know how it can be clean at this point because we've talked about it a lot, but I'm going to say no, and I'm going to work on letting that discomfort of it all pass without spending a lot of time doing something about the discomfort part.
So just sitting in it, just recognizing that it's happening.
Mhm.
You do have some discomfort around it, but it will pass.
Mhm.
And then you're able to kind of move on to the next.
Yes.
And I think that is very smart. And it does make me think about for others that are listening and maybe still kind of thinking about like, okay, what about my situation here? We started off talking a little bit about women and men. And I do want to, and again, like I said, I've never lived my life as a man. I don't know what that would be like, but having been a woman for, my entire life, I do think I have noticed a certain socialization that we start like with even girls, and that it's being accommodating, being helpful, being reliable and rewarding, that pleasant,
Yes.
like, and rewarding that. And so it also goes against, and even though I feel like we've been shifting into more of an era of women being assertive and
I
being
like
able.
eras.
Yes, I know
Sorry.
you love era. I chose it just for you. But being able to say no and mean it and say no. And I think though there is still that flip of, so, okay, I'm not being accommodating. I'm not being helpful in the moment. I may or may not say no pleasantly. And, someone might think of me as less reliable. But, that also, that last part, the reliability part, I remember I was reading a book over the holidays and it was just, a fluffy, fun book. But the lead character, the main woman, she said yes to everything. And so
Mhm.
people put herself in great distress to say yes to other people. And it wasn't until kind of like the main character came in, the main male character recognized what she was doing and kind of brought this image that so she could see it. But she did start saying no, and throughout it realized that she just was the one that always said yes. And so people kept coming to her because she was the easy yes. She was
Yes.
the easy one that to always be accommodating and pleasant. And it wasn't because she then never really talked about how stressful it was to anybody that she was saying yes to. And so I do think that there is a thought process there. So here is the tricky part. I want you to think about is honoring yourself and maybe, I'm going to say maybe, being perceived as unaccommodating, unhelpful, not pleasant, maybe even unreliable. Is that a bigger, like, how does that make you feel being like a bigger cost to yourself? And I'm going to say too, here's the reliability part I find a little frustrating in this. So I do want to pull that one back a little bit.
I do too, because I want to talk about that too.
Yes, yes. Okay. So here's where I might change my thought. If I already said yes, and then I'm like, okay, I don't really want to. So now I'm gonna say no.
At the last minute, that
At
hurts
the last
somebody. That's
minute.
different.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the last minute. That feels different. Then I might say, okay, people are kind of expecting you. You said yes. You have to kind of honor it. And next time you're asked, say no. Like, just, you're better at because you're not going to be seen as unreliable if you are just straightforward. And I'm going to even say, from a personal perspective, if I ask you to do something, I would rather you say no up front and have me have to maybe take a few more steps to like move on to the next plan of action than for you to say yes and then just cancel on me at the last minute.
Yeah. There's a difference between saying yes and not following through, or saying yes and then changing your mind, or saying no to everything,
Yes.
right? Like, sure, you do portray certain characteristics if you always say no. If you aren't thinking about the true cost of the request that came to you, but to really consider carefully and either say yes or say no, and seek to find balance in that, so that it serves your family, it serves your friends, but it also serves you. That's not letting people down. That's not being an unreliable person. That's not being an ungrateful person. Those are the people that always say no. Like that's not what I want to be, right?
Right.
I'm really just trying to think about how can we give ourselves grace and give ourselves permission to pause and consider. And when we know we need to say no, to just do it in a nice, clean way, even if it's uncomfortable, without coming back to it. I got to
Mhm.
keep explaining myself. I got to keep apologizing. I've got to keep whatever. We get caught in that hamster wheel sometimes, but I certainly am not sitting here saying, because I think I need to say no to this one thing and it's a struggle for me, I'm going to practice saying no to everything.
Right.
And what
Right.
you just discussed with your, think about what's your formula, Amy? Say it again.
Was
Time,
it the word?
effort.
Oh, time, effort, energy, and money. So your
Yeah.
resources.
Yes. I think about our shows that we go to, right? And I've heard you say many times this season, I couldn't say yes to everything. There were several others that I wanted to go to, but I had to make some decisions and find that balance. And so you did. You're not going to every single show, but randomly, when there's a ticket available because someone else couldn't come at the last minute, you're like, let me know, because I might at this moment have the resources or the time or whatever. So,
Well, and I have said this to many people, and it's when I can say yes, I will. The reason I say that is because that is something that I live by. So if somebody asks me to help them out, if I can, I will. If I look at my resources and I can, I will. If somebody asks me to go do something really fun and that I want to do, but I also know that I have done a lot of fun things and I've put out off writing the dissertation or some of those commitments right now that I have to do in order to become the best version of myself that I want to be. Sometimes I have to say no. So by saying and meaning, like, not just lip service, but like actually meaning I will say yes when I can, I still get asked to do things. I still get, so I think what you were saying with the balance of stuff. Yes, if I always say no, eventually people are going to stop asking me to do things. If someone asks me to help out and every single time I'm asked to help out, they're going to ask me to stop helping out. Now, here's where I think the tricky part that the person has to think about. Do you want to stop being asked for certain things? Like, are you asked to do something that goes against your values, your effort, your energy, that you find yourself frustrated when you are asked? You would rather never say yes to that. Then, if that is a situation, then two, one, sometimes just having the hard conversation of, you know what, that one, I'm sorry, like the answer is probably never going to be yes.
Mhm.
Like having that. And
Like,
that is
I'm
where I really,
unsubscribing.
yes. Yeah. Well, and I think too, like those, that's boundaries. Like to me, when we talk about boundaries with yes or no, and I don't want to do the thing, and I say, like, hey, yes, keep asking, I'm not holding my boundaries because somebody's going to come back and keep asking. And then I have to keep saying no. And I don't like that
Mhm,
where because I never wanted to do the thing. And I should have just bucked up and had the real conversation of I'm not your girl. I'm not your lady. Like this is not like you don't want me to do this
mhm,
because if I say yes, I'm not going to do it well just because I know me and this is not using the best version of myself. This is not the best use of my skill set. And I promise you there is someone else out there that can do it a lot better than me. And so I'm going to encourage you to find that or if I say yes to what I can, I'm going to actually help you find somebody else that can do it better. But sometimes it's just a flat out no. But I think then too, where you kind of go with that is saying, okay, that's holding a boundary. Like that to me is 100%. I don't want to say yes. Where I think holding the boundary of, yes, I still want to be asked because I will say yes when I can, but I have to hold the boundary for myself. Like I have to do the things I have to do. And again, going back to that saying, when you say yes to say something, you're saying no to something else.
mhm,
And you might be on that balancing beam of I want to say yes to both things, or I want to say no to both things, or I could wishy-wash my way into either way and actually probably be okay with the outcome. But these two things are on either side and they both hold such meaning for me. And I think also this is another situation. So I have been talking a lot in the world of work and change management right now. And but this word, and I feel like it is the weirdest word to have in almost every conversation, but I'm going to bring it up again, and it's grief. So, in that, when you have a balance beam of yes and no items, give yourself the time to be disappointed and maybe grieve the thing that you ended up having to say no to that you really would have liked to have said yes to. And then you can move away from it. And I think that's where the wishy-washiness sometimes comes into it too is that we don't give ourselves that time to say like, yeah, I would have really loved to. So like, here's an example. Let's say a group of friends call up and say, "Hey, we're going on a girls trip. It's going to be an amazing girls trip. We want to go. Everybody needs to contribute $500. We're going to go. We're going to fly to this place." And you're looking at your resources and saying, the effort it would take for me to get someone to watch the kids. I don't know where I'm going to pull $500 from right now. I need this new appliance. I need to buy this, and this. And I'm sure I would go and have a great time, but I don't know if I could go and not constantly be thinking about all the things I've dropped by going. So
mhm,
I'm going to, let's say, so I'm going to say no. In that moment, you can grieve that you had to make the responsible decision and say no to something you really wanted to do.
mhm,
And in turn, then letting that, and then we look at the stages of grief. There's some disappointment, there's some reasoning. I think the reasoning is the wishy-washy part, like the bargaining of grief. Like, oh, well, maybe if I don't do all of these other things and I work, extra hours and I take on this other job and I do these other tasks so that I can come up with the money so I can do this, but is that really fair to my family because now I'm going to be away from this, so like you're going back and forth and you're bargaining. And that's kind of again those things. And then there's okay to be angry. I'm mad I can't go on this vacation and that all my other friends are going to go on this vacation. I know they're going to have a great time and I don't want to hear about it. I don't want anybody to come back and I don't want anyone to tell me how amazing it
No,
was
I'm
because
like,
like
"Send me all the
I
pictures."
know, I know. But like, but I have heard people
Yes,
say
I know.
this. And so I think that is something too that like call it what it is. And I'm not saying again this for your situation, but I'm
Yeah,
saying when we do say no, like allow yourself the time to grieve and also maybe recognize that's what it is and that you will move through it. But there's going to be a lot of complicated feelings in the meantime. And I will say this too, as I know I'm kind of on my thing, sometimes it's really easy to say no. And that isn't one of these situations because that we're talking about today, because I want to talk about and I think all the things we've led up to is the grief that causes you stress. And one of the best ways I heard stress defined long time ago, and I think there's multiple ways to define stress. But one of the ways that I define stress is that when you are going against, or a situation that causes you stress is when you are going against a set of values that you hold dear to yourself. So you're in conflict, and conflict cause stress. And so I think too, when it's easy for you to say no, like, hey, I don't want to do that. I don't have the time. I don't have the resources. That doesn't sound fun to me. It's easy. Like you don't think about it. So I think too, kind of putting around what we're talking about today is the value to ourselves, the way of saying no when we know saying no is going to cause us some level of stress because it is in conflict with what we would also like to be doing.
yeah, because if saying no feels hard, right, it's not that you're bad at the boundaries, it means you care, and you care about multiple things, and they might be bringing, the kind like, "Am I gonna care for myself in this instance, or am I gonna care for these other people or the thing I'm missing?" Right? It's not always easy, I guess, but you know what I'm thinking right now, Amy? I'm thinking we might need to do an episode on listening to the no.
Mm. I think listening to the no is a really big thing. I hope you wrote that down
I
because
did.
okay, good, because I think listening to the no is important and also what that other person might be trying to tell us.
Yeah.
I like that. I think we should definitely come back to that one.
Okay. Well, I will say in this particular circumstance, the no has been very hard. But as you've been talking today, it did make me think about other times when I've said no and been so thankful later on that I said no. Again, knowing that I say yes a lot. I don't always say no, but you've reminded me that I am very grateful for historical times when I maybe was wise enough in the moment to say no when I needed to say no. And I'm thinking that we might end with a question to our listeners, which is, what is a no that you're practicing right now or that you are going to consider practicing?
Thanks for tuning in to This Was Supposed to Be Easy. Remember, the best stories are the ones we live.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep the conversation going because life may not be easy, but listening in should be.
Stay curious, stay connected, and keep wondering.